So Jesus, having coming from a lineage of warriors, when he came into the scene, he came in to liberate the Israelites and to find freedom on their land. Jesus didn't come to bring us the good news. He came to liberate the Israelites on their land. And the only good news, gospel is a good news. The only good news for people that have been taken away from their land and for people that are not free and that are captives, the only good news is liberation and freedom. That is the only good news that they know. Even when God created the world, before he could create man, he began by creating land. So from Genesis to Revelation, the whole book called the Bible, it's about a people, an African nation, a black people fighting for their land. In the book of Genesis, God created man and made man land and put him on the land. During the time of Adam and Eve, God put them on the Garden of Eden, which was on the land. In the days of Noah, Noah had reigned for 40 days and 40 nights. And he waited for 150 days for dry land. And he went and settled on a dry land. On the Tower of Babel, when they decided to build this great building to the heavens, they were building it on the land. When Abraham goes to Egypt, he gets permission to settle on the promised land. When Jacob came up with his 12 sons and settled on the land that Abraham lived, and they now go down to Egypt to keep from starving, and they stayed there for 430 years on the land. After Moses, when Joshua fights the fight in Jericho, he was fighting over the land. All these years spent under the judges, for 200 years under Simon and other kings, the conflict has been over the land. All the kings have to rule over kingdoms, and kingdoms are over the land. They are government. So all the kings that were fighting during that time, they were fighting to govern their own people on their own land. When they were taken to Babylon in captivity, they were moved away from their land, and their land was burned down, their capital was burned down, and they were moved from their land. And they had to go back to their land after 70 years of captivity. When Judas Maccabees rose up to rebel and organize a revolt, this was liberation of people to go back to their land. So when Jesus enters the scene, after such a glorious tradition and history of warriors fighting over land, what do you think that Jesus was fighting for? The kingdom of heaven. And what is a kingdom? A kingdom is a government. and government rules over land. So he too was fighting for the land. In the book of Revelations, it says, I saw a new heaven and a new earth, and the first heaven and the first earth was passed away, and there was no more sea. So John was seeing, he saw the city of New Jerusalem set out of God, and from heaven it landed on some land. So from the book of Genesis to Revelation, the whole book called the Bible, it is all about the struggle of a people, African people, Hebrews, fighting for their land. To this day, in South Africa, apartheid was orchestrated and designed by the Europeans, the Caucasians, and they captured the African religion as usual. And they, until today, are holding on to 87% of the land. We need to understand that the fight for land has been an ongoing fight from the first dynasty. Because even amongst ourselves as Africans, even before the first European stepped their foot into Africa, we were fighting amongst each other and capturing each other in order to make sure that our kingdoms are strong and capturing land. So it is all about land. You cannot separate a people from their land. Even when God created man, he started by creating land for the man. So the fight for land is a real fight. African people must realize that Africa belongs to them. That Christianity is their way of living. That Christendom has cut them off their roots and they need to go back there. Homosexuality in the African culture was introduced by the Greeks. When the Greeks took over from the Babylonians during the time of captivity, they introduced homosexuality to the Africans. The Greeks would even build gyms, and in their gyms they would be walking around naked. We didn't know homosexuality as Africans. It was introduced by the Greeks. The destruction and the introduction of the dark world, the introduction of homosexuality in 331 BCE, when the Greeks took over from the Persians, that is when homosexuality started in Africa, and they had to take the mark of the beast. So it started with the Greeks when they took over. We didn't know that in Africa. Thank you very much. we are going to leave it at that. We will see again next week, Wednesday, when we are doing our 6th episode. Thank you very much.